We must work for a future where Africans are able to migrate out of choice and not necessity. And we call on this Pan-African Parliament to take up the mantle of leadership, to be at the forefront of finding sustainable solutions to this issue. When I met the members of the Bureau before coming to this open session, they said, Mr. President, will you articulate what this Parliament should do in addition to what it is called upon to do? And it is this. This is this issue of migration that this Parliament must give leadership to. This Parliament must address this issue in a way that brings us all together, to work together. The measure of Africa's development will not only be the ease with which Africans can move across borders, it will also be the extent to which every African country offers all its citizens sufficient opportunity, dignity, and hope. As the honorable members of this Parliament, as the collective leadership of this continent, we have a responsibility to build a better Africa. It cannot and should not be the responsibility of the heads of state or certain countries only. It must be a collective responsibility, and all of us who are seated here are leaders, and that is why we were elected and chosen to come and represent our peoples of Africa. We have a responsibility to build a continent that is at peace with itself, where conflicts are resolved through dialogue and diplomacy. And some of those challenges are challenges of migration, which is a topical issue, not only on the African continent, but especially in South Africa as well. Today, many parts of our continent are confronted by the challenge of migration in our own countries and out of our continent to other continents. Here in South Africa, as has been the experience of other countries, we have witnessed outbreaks of anti-migrant sentiment and incidents of intimidation and violence directed at foreign nationals, and incidents that have been quite sad and abhorrent, where people have been injured and some people have died and lost their lives, which we as South Africa deeply, deeply regret and mourn. This is fueled in part by misinformation and prejudice, but it draws on a genuine concern among some South Africans about the social and economic burden that is brought upon them by illegal migration. As the South African government, I want to make it clear, we have taken a firm stance against any form of intimidation, vigilantism, or violence directed at people from other countries or other nations. We've taken a firm stand against hatred for people from other countries, xenophobia or Afrophobia. We have taken steps to strengthen and enforce our laws, to diffuse tension and to ensure that all persons within our borders respect the rights of all, and that the rights of people from outside South Africa are respected and upheld. Migration itself is an essential part of the African story. Throughout history, across every continent, people have moved in search of opportunity or safety, and they will continue to do so. We must not conflate lawful migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers with people who enter or remain in countries in violation of immigration laws. Nor should migrants or people from outside the country be made to be scapegoats for unemployment, crime, or shortcomings in the delivery of public services. Our response must combine firm, fair, and effective immigration management with an unwavering defense of human dignity and the rule of law. Our task is to ensure that migration is managed in a manner that affirms the rights and dignity of all people, that respects international conventions, and that advances social cohesion and the unity of Africans as a whole. And this is where we also say that we need to work together, and we call upon various countries on our continent to work with us to address this challenge. South Africa cannot solve this challenge alone. It needs to work together with its sister countries and with the peoples of our continent to address this problem. We have seen how unmanaged migration can undermine the sovereignty, the security and social order of countries, not only South Africa, but many other countries. As African countries, we have to acknowledge and address the conditions that drive migration in the first place. We need to work together, as I said, to address issues like conflict, instability, governance failures, poverty, and social discord. We need to create equal economic opportunities across the African continent. But we also need to silence the guns, which is a very clear and firm position that has been taken by the African Union. We need to build inclusive institutions of governance. We must work for a future where Africans are able to migrate out of choice and not necessity. And we call on this Pan-African Parliament to take up the mantle of leadership, to be at the forefront of finding sustainable solutions to this issue. When I met the members of the Bureau before coming to this open session, they said, Mr. President, will you articulate what this Parliament should do in addition to what it is called upon to do? And it is this. This is this issue of migration that this Parliament must give leadership to. This Parliament must address this issue in a way that brings us all together, to work together. The measure of Africa's development will not only be the ease with which Africans can move across borders, it will also be the extent to which every African country offers all its citizens sufficient opportunity, dignity, and hope. As the honorable members of this Parliament, as the collective leadership of this continent, we have a responsibility to build a better Africa. It cannot and should not be the responsibility of the heads of state or certain countries only. It must be a collective responsibility, and all of us who are seated here are leaders, and that is why we were elected and chosen to come and represent our peoples of Africa. We have a responsibility to build a continent that is at peace with itself, where conflicts are resolved through dialogue and diplomacy, rather than through the barrel of a gun. It is a continent that produces everything that it needs. This is what this continent must be. That extracts from its abundant resources the full value that belongs to the peoples of Africa. Rather than exporting our raw wealth, we must process our minerals, our agricultural produce, and our energy ourselves. We are building a continent where our young people have the skills, and they are continuously demonstrating that they have the knowledge and the skills, we must also build a continent where capital and opportunity is there to build enterprises and careers on African soil rather than seeking them abroad. This is a continent where women should take their rightful place in the boardrooms, in the parliaments, in the cabinets of our various countries. And they must take their place not in the home only, but in the factories, in the various institutions that lead this continent. This continent must be a continent whose voice in global institutions matches its size, its history, and its potential. Long must be the days when Africa is always pushed to the back. Africa belongs to the front. We must lead the global events that are unfolding, because we are, as Africa, the origins of humanity. Humanity originates from this continent. We must therefore take our place in global matters. And to do so, we must have a common voice, one voice that is powerful and resolute on the reform of the United Nations Security Council, on the international financial architecture, and in the councils that set the rules of trade, climate, and technology. Now, to build this Africa, we must translate the agreements we have signed into the laws, institutions, and resources that give life to these agreements. But this parliament must also be given the legislative powers that it requires. Now, yes, the Malabo Protocol was passed. It has not yet been ratified by many countries. And I will call upon my own country and many other countries to ratify this protocol, so that you must not be members of a toy telephone. You must be a parliament that really delivers, a parliament that regulates, that seeks to regulate the various continental matters that affect the peoples of Africa. And of course, many people fear that you will replace their own national parliaments, and I don't believe so. You should be able to function as the parliament of our continent in consultation and in cooperation and collaboration with our national parliaments. Too many of our continental commitments remain aspirations on paper. We must invest in our people, in education, in health and skills, so that our demographic strength, and it is a huge strength, of 1.5 billion people going to rise to a much bigger number. And this strength must become a dividend and not a burden. We must connect our continent with the roads, with railways, with ports, energy grids, and digital infrastructure that allow goods, capital, data, and people to move freely. We must strengthen the institutions of this union, of our African Union, so that they have the authority and resources and political support to act on matters of peace, security, health, and development and trade. And we must remain united. Africa's story teaches us that division has long been the instrument through which others have sought to shape our destiny. A united Africa shapes its own destiny. The success of this seventh legislature, this seventh parliament, will not be measured only by the debates that you hold or the resolutions that you will adopt. It will be measured by the laws that it helps to shape, the commitments it helps to implement, and the difference it makes in the daily lives of the people of Africa. History will judge us not by the speeches that we deliver, but by the Africa we build. Yes, that is so. So let this parliament be the conscience of our continent. Let it be the voice of Africa's most vulnerable. Let it be the guardian of democracy, and let it be the champion of peace. But let it be the great reservoir of enabling the young people of our continent, the women of our continent, to take their place in development matters and in matters of progress. So this parliament, therefore, has a great responsibility. And let me say, we are there to work with you, to support you, and to enable you to execute your tasks. Mr. President and Vice Presidents, I thank you for giving me this opportunity. At last, I've now been allowed to come here. So thank you very much.